Hey, how are you doing, Cash?
I'm good. How are you doing?
I'm good. I'm good. I'll introduce you to everybody. Man, you have a very diverse background. You were with the U.S. National Security Council, but also obviously recently Chief of Staff to Secretary of Defense under President Donald J. Trump. And first of all, it's a pleasure to have you. Your life has been pretty busy lately, as it looks like.
Yeah, I've been trying to take a time out, but evidently not. It's a fun time. It's easier to just say Chief of Staff for DoD.
I totally get it. I Man, I was just doing part of the show and talking about this January 6th thing amongst many other situations. And with the American public, this is starting to feel like a movie out of a really great graphic novel writer. What was your experience like dealing with this level of corruption when you were in there?
Um, wow. Well, I don't think we have a week to talk about it, so let me break it down to a minute. I mean, look, as the guy who ran the Russiagate investigation for Chairman Nunes and exposed the dossier for what it was in the Nunes memo and told the world that it was the biggest political criminal enterprise ever perpetuated against a presidential election cycle, I thought that was going to be my only round if that wasn't big enough. And then it sort of repeated itself in the national security sector. So it's not that like the 99% of people that serve aren't great. They are. They're awesome. They put the mission first. I was in for 16 years across government agencies as a civilian in DOD and over in the IC and a federal terrorism prosecutor. Everybody just signs up to basically be like, this, you can't do this work anywhere else. So you do it. Where we got corrupted was the leadership, the James Comeys, the Andy McCabe's, the Peter Strzok's of the world, and like the Gina Haspel's and the Rod Rosensteins basically said, I don't exist to serve the mission. The mission exists to serve me. And I think that's where we go categorically wrong. And we prove that over and over again. So what we had to do was fight them. And that's what we did. We fought the top. We didn't fight, the everyday workers, the guys and gals. And it was an unfortunate experience because I thought, well, if it gets to the top, that's where it's supposed to get corrected, not where it's supposed to be directed. And unfortunately, that's what happened.
Now, before you went in, because you've been doing this for a while, you've been in this world, you understood it. Going in, did you guys know that it was this deep? Did you know some of these names at the top were there, or were you just uncovering the layers as you went and realizing this goes deeper than you even thought?
Yeah, I mean, look, if I'd be lying if I sat here and told you when I did Russiagate, when I did the national security work, that I could say predict that it went to the head of the FBI and the head of the IC and the head of the DNI. And then when I was doing national security mission, I was shocked to find that the director of the NSA, the director of the CIA would somehow obstruct a presidential directive. And so it was problematic. But the one thing that I always reminded myself was, and then maybe this is what stood a lot of us in the administration who were executing President Trump's national security priorities was, he said X and we did it. That was it. He's the commander in chief. There's a chain of command. For some reason, these people, such as Chairman Milley and other folks, thought it was appropriate to go outside of the chain of command when it politically suited them and leak media information or information to the media that was sometimes sensitive and classified. And we could have done the same. I could have broken the law and said, hey, here's classified information. Here's the real story. But that would be playing their game and breaking the law, which is something I was never going to do. And so, we relied on the process we instituted under, my entire career as a public defender, a federal prosecutor, or whatnot. You get the facts out in the right way because that's what the American people deserve. You don't cheat them to satisfy a headline for the fake news.
No, 100%. I remember the beginning of the pandemic. It stands out quite clearly was when we were battling everything. And I remember General Milley coming out and he gave this about 2 minute dissertation on we're at war and we will not allow any Americans to be hurt. We will stand against anything that comes in from foreign territory, et cetera, paraphrasing. Do you guys know it then that you're dealing with people on the inside, or was that being uncovered as you went? Because obviously we see it from the Mockingbird media. Like we see this stuff come out. I don't know if you guys see this beforehand or if there's any intuition happening there.
Now, it's a combination of factors. Sometimes we see it beforehand, sometimes we see it during, and then sometimes, unfortunately, we didn't see it at all. And when afterwards it was too late, we saw it. It just depends on who you're talking about. And that's why I think personnel was so important. And we got it wrong in the first couple of years of the Trump administration in so many various spots. And I think that was something that we really had to fight against when you don't have people who agree with the policy of the president. And normally what happens when you don't have people who agree with the policy of the commander in chief is they have the temerity and tact to resign because they're not above the president. No one is. And, you know, talk about subverting democracy. It's funny to hear the left say that the president, quote unquote, tried to hijack an election and whatnot. They spent 4 years trying to hijack the 2016 election by miring him in the false Russiagate scandal or Trump or Ukraine impeachment hoax or whatever else Adam Schiff's circus animals were conjuring up next. And so we just tried to stay focused on the mission. And if the people weren't executing the mission per the chain of command that was lawful, then yeah, I had no problem calling them out.
And now they just call you a conspiracy theorist. I can't believe I can't believe that they would call you that. Were you, when you were there, because you were under Chris Miller, correct?
Yeah.
Yeah. I remember when him standing up, I saw a clip of him talking with in front of Vice President Pence and saying we were in the most complex war that we've ever been in. I feel like we're in a war right now. Can you talk to that, or is that not something that we should go down that road?
I mean, I don't know. I wouldn't want to use the term war because if you've ever been in or around one, it's the worst. It doesn't get any more painful and tragic than that. Especially if you have the ability to just put aside the fact that you're fighting your enemy and also ascertain how awful it is for them. And so we were fighting a different sort of battle internally that the media didn't help with. And that's why, you know, since I've left government, haven't been a target of defamation, haven't been a target of the media. You know, we have to start initiatives that we believe in that support our fight against the media. And we have to correct it because, as you said, you know, only a only a small percentage of Americans ever serve. And that's the way it's supposed to be. The rest of America is supposed to go out and do what they want because the minority of us serve. And the media is supposed to report it accurately, but they stopped. They failed to do that from 2015 on through this day. And that's why we have to correct the media, and that's why I started Fight with Cash.
Yeah, I want to actually bring that up. We have your site here, Fight with Cash, and tell us a little bit about that before we dive into the January 6th, because I know this all has to do with obviously fake news and people getting thrown off and things like that around those types of events. Tell me about the Fight with Cash and what you're exactly doing, because I think it's amazing.
Yeah, thanks so much. So it's all sort of interconnected, right? You know, once Russiagate happened and they put me in the media and they called me the nastiest things on planet Earth, they eventually started actually defaming me, actually making up outright lies about places I was and things I did. And I said, enough. You know, that's not what government service is about, and that's used to not be what the media is about. So I sued CNN, the New York Times, and Politico. I'm still suing them. I'm suing them for a ton of money. And not because I care about the money, because when we win, I'm going to publicize to the world that we won, and they were wrong, and they knew it. But what I realized along the way was, I'm not the only one. You don't have to be a public figure in government to be spoken about on TV. It happens in local communities. It happens in local papers. It happens on local radio stations. People across America were defamed or deplatformed by big tech and big media. And so I started fightwithcash.com. It's fightwithcash.com with a K. And I've been raising money for 6 months. It's a trust. It's a legal offensive trust where we raise money and everybody can get a hold of me directly through the website. I have no social media, but you can get a hold of me on the website. And if you have a case, we ask you to send in a summary. We have a brilliant team of lawyers that looks at it. And if you have a case, if you have a cause of action, we will pay for your attorneys. So you have your day in court. So you get to sue and you get to clear your name in court and you get to have your day. And that's what Fight with Cash is all about. Plus, we got tons of great free content up there. My show's up there, Cash's Corner. We'll put this up there if you let me. And we have great merch, patriotic merchandise that we sell. But all of it goes back to the trust because we want to hear from Americans. We've heard from a lot of them.
I'm sure you have.
We've got cases going, and we want to get more cases going. So any help that your audience can give to fightwithcash.com is greatly appreciated.
Sure, and I had to play partial, I guess, devil's advocate, just because this is the stuff we hear when we actually run shows and things like that. Is we almost feel like the system is against all of us, including, unfortunately, the judicial system. How do Americans get back a trust in the fact that, okay, we can do lawsuits, which I totally agree with, but how do we get a trust back in the fact that we can win these, but also kind of gain back our government, because we have lost our republic. We need to gain it back in our power.
Yeah, so basically, you have to have people go first. You have to have leaders like a Devin Nunes lead the way. You have to have, great Americans that I served with, like Johnny Ratcliffe or Rick Grinnell. These types of folks lead the way, Jim Jordan, because they take it on every day. And then you have to sort of follow in their wake and be a little courageous yourself. And then you have to translate that into victories because you use your public notoriety, your means, and your capabilities to win. And when they see that you can win, they're like, why can't I win? And I don't want money to be a factor for them not to be able to win. And that's the whole point of doing it for others. And we're going to continue. But it's related because that's only step one, right? If we win, which we will, and we win on behalf of other Americans, which we will, that's great. But we're going to tell the world we did it. And that's how you correct the media, because you show them the fake news media intentionally defame not just me or Devin Nunes or a figure of notable worth, but everyday Americans, John Q. voter in Iowa or Idaho or Wyoming or where have you. We want to get your voices heard because that's what America is. I was in Nebraska this past weekend for a Fight with Cash event. 500 people showed up from all over Nebraska. And they asked me a really important question. They said, why do you do this? And I simply answered, because of this room. That room represents America. Washington, D.C. doesn't represent America. Washington, D.C. is a total cesspool. And because I know that there's so many people in the states like Nebraska willing to entertain and engage in the fight, that's why I think we can win.
No, that makes sense. And it's almost a strategy in a way of deleting the coffers of the media to the point where,
Yeah.
I mean, their ratings are so low right now. It's unbelievable.
They're begging for Trump to go back on whatever social media platform, because you're right, their ratings have tanked. They're not sitting there. I mean, they're still blaming him for everything, including the sunrise and the sunset. But now they're just barking about Jan 6, which I know we'll get to in a second, or, we're not talking about national security. We're not talking about Iran. We're not talking about China. We're not talking about Russian aggression. We're talking about, at least in D.C., the only thing people want to talk about is Jan 6, Jan 6, Jan 6. And America doesn't care. They don't want to pay $6 at the pump. They want food on the table. They don't want critical race theory shoved down the education platforms of our public schooling system. They don't want fentanyl coming in from China and killing our youth. These are things people care about.
That I'll tell you, before we do January 6th, that's probably been one of my greatest appreciations of the president, was the eradication, or the attempted eradication, of removing the drug scene from America, the fentanyl, everything coming over the borders. I mean, can you touch on that at all from what you saw behind the scenes?
No, look, I worked on that directly. We created an entire platform because President Trump said counter narcotics is not a tier 3 or tier 2 priority. It's a tier 1 priority. We sent United States officials, including the Attorney General, to Mexico. I don't know when the last time that happened, to combat the drug cartels. That is pretty significant stuff. President Trump built the wall. It's no coincidence that drug trafficking and human trafficking, equally if not worse in terms of their criminality, were reduced by over 30% during the Trump focus on border security, because of his initiatives and because of his willingness to go on and take on Mexico and say, you want our continued funding? Stop sending drugs across our southern border. And they listened. And so, of course, that won't get covered. What will get covered is fake news stories about border agents using a horsewhip to corral individuals. Turned out to be totally false. Fake news stories about how we're racist and we hate immigrants. We're not racist. We don't hate immigrants. We just happen to love Americans and don't want our kids killed by Chinese fentanyl and opioids and cocaine and crack and all these other things that come. We don't grow them in America. They come into America.
Yeah, amen. It's one of the many things that I could tell they absolutely hated President Trump for, because there's this whole drug running thing to the behind the scenes. But I was thinking this last night. Have we ever had a president, or even anyone close to being impeached twice, impeachment hearings twice, and even trying for a third, This was insane. Is this their only route to try to get him completely deleted from history?
Well, that's what they want to do. That's the extension of some of the work that's going on Capitol Hill. That's the never ending yammering of